In all my time in public life, and come up to 50 years now, I have to say that there is one issue that really gets people going, and has made and unmade governments on a regular and routine basis, and that is the issue of superannuation, and the kind of lifestyle that we'd like to live in when we retire. And it is an issue that is as alive for people who have retired as it is for those retiring, as it is for those who are 20 and 30-year-olds with many, many decades yet of working life to go through before they can, and fearing, I might add, that the current generosity of the New Zealand superannuation scheme will not be there in any way, shape or form when they get there. So it's a intergenerational, I won't say a dispute, but I have to say it's an intergenerational fear or anxiety as well. Well, in the last week, we've had from Massey University, in fact, their Financial Education and Research Centre, a report released which was Retirement Expenditure Guidelines, and we are joined by the author of that report, Professor Claire Matthews, and welcome to the show. Claire, great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Maureen and Michael, happy to be here.
Good on you. Listen, I'm really interested in this report. It was very badly reported, can I say, because I read it, and I've read some of the media reports connected with it. And on one hand, I'm apparently better off if I'm living in urban New Zealand than if I'm living in provincial New Zealand. And on other reports, I'm better off living in provincial or rural New Zealand than I am living in urban New Zealand. Can you clarify metropolitan, provincial, rural? Where am I better off living if I'm trying to live on my current retirement savings?
Unfortunately, it's not as simple a question as you might think, because it does depend on what type of household and what type of lifestyle you want. And that's one of the things that confuses people about the guidelines, is that it's not as straightforward as saying that you should live in either the metro or the provincial areas, and it creates a lot of uncertainty. So metro, just to be clear, refers specifically to Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. Provincial covers the rest of the country, so there's quite a lot of variety in that. But the reason why there's the uncertainty and the lack of clarity is that we're not making any assumptions. These guidelines are not based on any judgments by us. What it is data that Statistics New Zealand have pulled from the Household Economic Survey for us, and it reflects what retirees living in either a one-person or two-person households in a metro provincial area, either a no-frills or choices lifestyle, what they are spending. And unfortunately, it's not nice and tidy, which is what happens with data, and so there's not an absolute answer. So depending on what type of lifestyle you want, whether you're a one- or two-person household, metro or provincial, there one or the other it's not straightforward to say it's always one or the other.
No, fair enough. I'm looking, I understand that, but I guess it was just the way it was reported. I think there were some sort of 25-year-old junior cadet reporters who were not interested in complexity, wanted to shortchange it, and somehow ended up giving a reverse message. Listen, I'm looking at, first of all, at national superannuation is at the moment. In 2025, actually as a result, ironically, of high inflation over the last couple of years, New Zealand super rates for pensioners living alone will be about just a little under 1,040 net a fortnight, which is now at first blush, $520 a week sounds quite generous, particularly if I was living in mortgage-free accommodation. And yet New Zealanders can't live on that? Is that one of the conclusions you've reached, or are finding it difficult to do so?
No, again, that's not a conclusion that this reaches, because we're talking about specific groups of people. So what we've done is, or what Statistics New Zealand have done for us, is put all the data about retired households and created quintiles, so 1/5, and based on rankings. So there's the no frills is based on the second quintile. So there's a group of people, a quintile worth of people living on less than what that no frills lifestyle is talking about. And a lot of those are living on just New Zealand Super. And I always get comment, because this is the 13th edition of the guidelines, and I always get feedback after the guidelines come out at the perception that what we're saying is you can't live on New Zealand Super. And absolutely you can, But yes, you're right. You almost certainly have to be living in your own home without a mortgage. And also you are likely to be living what I would describe as a fairly frugal lifestyle. Now, that is what some people want to do. But for a lot of us, that's not the lifestyle that we aspire to. And therefore, New Zealand Super isn't going to give us the lifestyle we want to. So it comes down to what do you want to do in your retirement as to whether New Zealand Super is sufficient. But absolutely, it avoids a lot of poverty in the elderly that you see in other countries.
Which takes me to the next point, I guess, and it's the point you made about metropolitan and provincial, etc. When you are looking at people who retire, many New Zealanders regard, I'm sure you know this, their house as essentially their superannuation. So if I pay off my house by the time I retire, then I can downgrade or I can downscale and then bank the capital that I get from doing so. Is that a common saving technique, or is that just an anecdotal overview?
Anecdotally, certainly, it's a not unusual saving approach. But when it comes to it, what people often find is that actually they don't want to downsize, or else when they the point at which they do decide to downsize is a lot later than they thought it was going to be. So they don't have access to that capital quite as soon as they thought they were going to. But certainly that is something that people do. But then it is a question of when you sell your property, what is it you're going to buy and how much are you actually going to be able to free up? And it might be that what you're selling for and what you're buying, that there's not as much difference even if you are downsizing.
Yeah, I guess, again, it depends where you live, isn't it? What the house property prices are doing. If you took that attitude in Wellington, you'd be falling on your bum over the last 5 years, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. It definitely depends where you're buying, or where you're selling and where you're buying. And certainly if you were selling in Auckland and moving to another part of the country, then there is a good chance that you will be able to free up a lot of capital. But if you do that, where are your friends and family? And, you're totally relocating, and so you're potentially leaving your friends and family behind. And again, I would ask, what is your retirement lifestyle like? Is that what you want? Maybe you don't have any friends. Maybe your family are all overseas, and so where you live in New Zealand doesn't matter. But for other people, they want to be close to their family and friends.
Which takes me to the next line here. Estate planning and family trusts have become part of, in fact, I think New Zealanders, you'd know better than I, but I read somewhere where New Zealanders are proportionately greater adherents of family trusts than any other Western democracy. And so the idea of family trust is essentially to get access to a whole series of income-related, from rest home subsidies to superannuation, by divesting yourself of your assets into some form of family trust. Is that right? Is that anecdotally correct, or is that empirically true too?
Anecdotally, I think empirically there is some evidence. However, it is also a slightly out-of-date statement in that it is something that was certainly true in the past, but the rules around trusts have changed, and so there is less appetite to to set them up now. So there will be a number of trusts that were set up in the past, and they will be continuing to operate. But it's not as attractive an option today as it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. So I think we will be seeing fewer trusts, but certainly there have been some advantages, but the government has seen that and has worked to try and trim back some of those advantages to discourage the use of trusts.